Session of the day, the topic being Nielsen IQ Retail Insights, what's next for the FMCG retail industry? And to present the same, may I invite on stage none other than the one and only Mr. Manish Gupta. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for him, Executive Director and India Leader, SMB. Thank you so much, Manish.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, let me first welcome you to the expo, right? For those who do not know Nielsen IQ, while I know Nielsen IQ is a real big name, Nielsen IQ tracks about 100 plus categories in the FMCG space. We do keep a track of what is the industry size, what is the share, and how brands are performing in the market. Now, with that perspective, we all know that the last 2 years have been a very, very dynamic and a very, very disturbing kind of times for us, right? It has impacted lives of everyone around us, whether you were working, whether you had a business, whether you were at school, wherever you were, right? In those times, FMCG industry has also had a very, very drastic change, right? We at Nielsen have been closely tracking the performance of FMCG, and today we will want to kind of talk to you about Nielsen in the post-pandemic era. How has the FMCG market changed during the pandemic times? So what has been the most different changes that we've seen after the post-pandemic? While Indian FMCG has been always growing, but even post-pandemic, FMCG industry bounced back and continued to have a consistent growth. So the impact of the COVID has not impacted the FMCG industry. Why has it happened in India? Because we, in India, are a very, very demographic, young audience, right? So we have young consumers who are continuing to buy, continuing to consume, and continuing to purchase. We have a growing middle class, very high on consumption. Urban sectors continue to drive the growth. And especially, the digital experience has really helped consumers buy from their households. So these were some of the indicators which continued to ensure that FMCG continued to grow. What has really bounced back? All markets and channels have bounced back. So whether we talk about the metros or we talk about the rural lower town classes, all of them have grown. All the three channels, whether it was GT, MT, or e-commerce, all the channels continue to see very, very healthy growths, right? The growth that we're seeing now is largely on the back of prices, and premiumization has also been observed in certain categories and pockets. So we've seen consumers really going and engaging with premium brands as well. E-commerce adoption has really moved up and has started growing at a very, very fast pace. Every consumer who was actually using GT and MT has also started to engage with e-commerce, and that's what has given a lot of boost to the overall FMCG industry, right? The other segment that really saw a lot of impact was the smaller players. The smaller players grew about two-thirds of the overall growth that we saw in FMCG came from the smaller players, which means the small and medium players continued to drive, while the large players were also growing at the same time. But what's happening during this post-pandemic period is we are seeing inflationary pressures. Most of us are seeing that the raw material prices are going up. We are seeing that the overall prices we are being pushed to kind of take prices up for various commodities or categories, right? And that's what we see, consumers trying to manage between their baskets or between the brands to manage this overall inflationary pressure. 1/5 of the consumers have switched stores, which means they move from one store to the other to look for different brands, right? Consumers are also switching to affordable options, which essentially means consumer loyalty has kind of taken an impact. Consumers are trying new brands, which is also a good news for us, because consumers, they are not really sticking to their own brands while they're giving us an opportunity to engage with them, right? And private labels have also seen growth due to the affordability. So people manage their basket or their purchases through using the private labels. Now, let me just kind of give you a glimpse of why India is kind of called out as a strong market. So if you look at the overall FMCG, which currently stands at about 4.93 lakh crores, right, and is growing at a CAGR of 5%, is clearly much ahead of many other markets across the globe. While if you look at our short-term growth, India is actually growing at about 17%, much, much faster than most of its peers across the globe. I could only reckon with some of the countries in Asia-Pac, which are growing at a 5-6%, but India grows almost 3x of that number by about 17%. So clearly, India has a lot of opportunity to grow and thrive. And this is a huge differential in terms of the growth that we see. Now, while this is a little busy chart, but let me just explain to you what it says. What we did is we actually tried to break down the growth of FMCG in terms of volume, value, and price, right? And what we see is that firstly, if you look at these four numbers, which are basically the 4 last years, we've seen that FMCG was growing at about 14%, came down to about 8.6, and a decline of minus 1.8 during the pandemic time has revived up to about 18% growth. So the kind of impact that we saw in FMCG, India has bounced back and the growth is back, right? But the concerning area is most of the growth is actually coming from the black box, which is the price-led growth. So we are seeing growth not on the back of consumption as much, but on the back of prices, which is a larger bucket. And if you see, quarter on quarter, we have been kind of trying to manage the overall growth. And obviously, the middle bar is really tall because of the base effect. But consistently, quarter over quarter, we are seeing FMCG coming back. So I think that clearly shows that there is enough opportunity to grow in the FMCG space. Moving further, let me just kind of give you some understanding of what are the drivers that are driving the FMCG retail space. Yeah? So firstly, where are the growths coming from? Growths are actually coming both from urban and rural. Urban grew at about 18%, rural grew about 17%, which essentially also means that there was much higher growth that was actually seen in the lower town classes, which grew much faster, right? And across zones, whether it was north, east, west, or south, we saw growth coming in from each and every zone per se. We saw heavy growth of about 8% in the stores to clock a number of about 11.4 million stores across the country, right? And when we look at the growth of the traditional channel, which is about 89% of the stores, grew at about 18%. The modern trade grew at about 11%, and e-commerce grew at about 17%, right? E-commerce has seen a large adoption, which actually moved from about 15% pre-pandemic to about 25 to 30% post-pandemic, during the pandemic times, and stabilizes at about 25% now. So which essentially talks about the great amount of change people are doing in their buying habits, and they are using multi-channels or omni-channels, and really looking at e-commerce as one of the good channels to kind of thrive and buy. So what are the drivers in terms of categories, right? So we saw food growing much faster than non-food. So food was a big driver as against non-food. Food grew largely on the back of staples. So a lot of commodity to branding, unorganized to organized, loose to packaged is what we saw in the commodities category. When we looked at the non-food categories, most of the growth in the non-food categories came from hygiene categories. So if you get deeper into the category, the top few growing categories in food were edible oils, chocolates, butter, and packaged rice. So a lot of people started consuming a lot more packaged food categories. When we look at the non-food categories, like I said, it was mostly hygiene categories like utensil cleaners, sanitary napkins, toothpaste, are categories which registered a very, very healthy growth in non-food. If we move forward and understand what kind of players were driving the growth, was it the large players like the Pepsi, Nestle, Coke? 60% of the growth comes in from the small and medium players, right? And about 2/3 of the overall incremental growth, which means out of the total growth that we registered, 60% of the growth were driven by small and medium players. Where did they drive growth? They saw about 10% more growth in stores. So they expanded footprints into new stores. You would remember during the pandemic period, a lot of stores' shelves were vacated because of supply chain. And we saw an influx of a lot of smaller or B brands getting into those stores, which registered converted into a 1.1x of stores. And a throughput growth of about 1.3 times as against the earlier period. So we saw growth coming from small players on the back of both consumption and distribution. So what does the future hold for manufacturers in today's time? So if you look at it, there are 4 things that really stand out for us. Firstly, evolving market. So markets beyond the metros have started registering very healthy growth. So lower town classes have seen a very, very healthy growth, and that remains as one of the drivers. And we will see how we can kind of help tap that opportunity. The quality of stores, which is basically getting into the right stores, is becoming more and more important. So the selection of the right store becomes critical. So people or manufacturers need to focus on the quality of store than the quantity. So how do you really get to the right store to actually drive the growth? The third and an important aspect of growth was really getting into the right kind of clusters within the state, right? Understanding demand and optimizing your distribution or marketing strategies to really focus on the right pockets of growth, which is what is referred as a micro-market strategy. And last but not the least is really looking at the evolved channels of modern trade and e-commerce, which certainly will become the growth driver going forward. So we are certainly have to understand how are MT and e-commerce evolving, because they will be the channels to really engage with the consumers and drive the growth. Now, as Nielsen, we keep talking to a lot of marketers, manufacturers, brand people to understand how we can help them on these things. So I will just kind of give you a few cases or examples of how we are helping clients really win in the market on all the 4 levers. So let's talk about the evolving market situation. So if you look at it, India is a very, very large country, right? With about 6 lakh villages and about 6,500 towns. You can't go to all the towns because it's a large geography. We can help you prioritize and get into the right set of stores, right set of towns, which can actually help you drive your growth, right? So if you look at the non-metro kind of town classes, how do you get to the right store, plan your distribution, and focus your marketing interventions on the right pockets? And that's where we help you get to the right place. So we have a solution which can actually tell you and prioritize your marketing strategies to get to the right place where the growth is coming from. The second thing that comes in is how do I get to the quality stores, right? We all know that India is a very, very large country. We have about 11.3 million stores in the market, right? But only 1.4 million stores among the top 26 towns. So 10% stores are actually giving you more than 40% of the overall sales, right? But even then, we can help you really get to the right end of the store and decide which stores do you want to activate. So where are the creme de creme stores, maybe the top 500 or the 1,000 stores of Bangalore or Mumbai, we can take you there. So using a lot of filters that we have in terms of category stocking parameters, premiumness of brands, premiumness of category, direct distribution of various manufacturers, we can take you to the store, which can actually give you the right throughput for your brand. So we can actually give you a list of stores which will help you really get to the right stores using the 25 parameters which we track, along with the GPS coordinates and the photographs of the store. So we will really take you to the right set of store which you should be there. So this is how we are actually helping most of the manufacturers really get to the right store. And in order to kind of activate that, you can certainly connect with Nielsen. Now, talking about a micro market, like we said, India is a large country. We have about 26 states, but every state has many, many districts. Now, keeping a count of which market to go in such a country is difficult. but really going to the right consumer and right micro market is equally important. So if you look at it, only about 5 states give you 50% of the sales, which only comes from these 5 states. So in case you want to prioritize, these are the 5 states to really focus on, and you can tap about 50% of the market. But if you have to go further down, once you've realized that maybe Maharashtra is the important market, and you want to activate that, we can actually take you to the right district cluster where you need to activate your products, right? So focusing on maybe which district will actually give you the right result, whether we need to focus on a Goa, or we need to go focus on Nagpur belt, or whether a Kolhapur belt, which belt will actually help you drive your performance and give you the right result is something that we can do for you. So instead of focusing on entire districts of Maharashtra, we can pinpoint and tell you which is the most important cluster or district cluster within the Maharashtra belt. And that's how we help you save a lot of dollars in terms of expanding or focusing on the market. So we will not only help you identify and analyze, but we'll also help you prioritize and execute and optimize your spends in the market. Moving further, modern trade has become a very, very critical channel along with e-commerce, right? While e-commerce is really catching pace fast, but modern trade has been a consistent channel which has seen growth over the years. If I just tell you that about 40% of the consumers do go to a modern trade to buy their products because of unavailability of products in the e-commerce channel, right? So and 70% of them do buy a food product, 50% of them do buy a personal care product. So we are constantly realizing that modern trade is an important channel. It is not only important from a sales perspective, but also because the consumer engages with the brand out there, right? How do you understand what will work in modern trade is very critical. We at Nielsen have a good tie-up and partnership with most of the modern trade retailers who share the POS with us, and that's what we use to kind of give you a lot of insight and understanding on what is the kind of weekly shifts that we see in the overall purchases. Week 1 versus week 2 versus week 3 versus week 4. What is the kind of pattern in terms of sales and consumption happening from modern trade? What are the kind of pricing strategies that are obtained? What is the kind of promotion? When is the promotion hitting the market in terms of a modern trade? Whether it happens in the week 1 or week 2 or week 4. So how does the pattern work? How is your competition trying to drive promos in this channel is something that we can help you. Capitalize on the key occasions. We are all aware of the big days. So how are brands utilizing those big days to tap the right consumer is something that we can kind of understand from this. Understanding on assortments and prioritizing which markets to kind of activate what kind of assortment, this data can be really, really powerful. So we can actually help you really drive your strategy in a very, very clear manner in terms of the modern trade channel. With that perspective, we have been able to kind of help you in each of the aspects in terms of being able to focus on how the market is behaving, what is the FMCG, which markets are growing faster, which kind of clusters are growing faster. We can really help you understand your performance in the market. We can help you with your product assortment, really helping which kind of SKUs should you drive, what kind of pricing should you be driving, what kind of promotions will work better for you. Really get to the right store where you should be really focusing on and taking you to that store along with a store photograph and a GPS code so that you can really execute well in the store. And finally, really leading to in-store analytics, which can actually help you extract the right kind of insights to be able to execute and plan well in the market. So once you actually kind of look at each of these pillars in which Nielsen can help you, you will really see you driving growth in your overall business. With that, I think I would kind of want to thank you, and we'll be happy to kind of address any questions that you may have either now or at our booth C17 to kind of address any of your questions. Thank you very much. Any questions in the audience you want to ask? questions? No worries. We are here right behind the stage at C17. We'll be happy to address your questions there. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, he deserves a huge round of applause. Thank you so much, Manish, for that extremely informative session. We have a small token of appreciation for you, and I'm going to take the liberty to present it to you.
Thank you. Thank you. He has a question. Thank you. Sorry.
Can we have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Come on.
Just a quick question for you.
Sure.
In this duration of the last 3 years, while you've seen the growth from the big brands to the small players, what I wanted to ask you is, as a percentage of the big Nestle's and the HULs, the store brands coming in, the private label in America is around 26% right now of the consumption. What is the ratio or the percentage of the total sale on the private label space, like Tata's coming up with Sky and so on and so forth?
See, private labels are becoming important as modern trade has become critical, right? So we did talk about the fact that, because of affordability, also private labels have become important. Now, understanding what contribution of growth that they contribute, see, modern trade in general is only about 10% of the overall trade in India, right? And I would say maybe private labels are currently less than 20% of the overall market. So that's the kind of contribution they have. They are growing faster than the overall channel, which is for sure. So I think we can kind of get into details of certain categories which are driving private labels much faster than the others. So we will be happy to kind of engage and talk to you of which categories are driving private labels faster, while intuitively I can tell you it is largely the impulse categories. So that's what is driving private labels much, much faster.
Hello, thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
This is a private label expo happening, and so somebody seeking to build up a private label brand, and let's say they're really impressed by the presentation, but Nielsen's is not cheap, right? Somebody starting the brand, they would want to invest in customer acquisition, etc. So how could then they use Nielsen's resources?
Okay, so I think first of all, let me break this myth. Nielsen is not expensive, right? The question is, see, I tell you what, and maybe, obviously I understand that price is a very relative concept, right? So somebody may find something very expensive versus lower, but we can certainly assure that ROI that we kind of provide to you based on the kind of investment that you do with us is much, much larger, right? Once you acquire a store or a customer, you will actually get better returns than the kind of amount you've invested. So that's one there. But, we'll be happy to kind of talk to you about various products and solutions which start as low as 50,000 or 1 lakh rupee as well and go up to multiple lakhs as well. So, first of all, it's important to understand that let's talk and understand what your requirements are. I'm sure we will be able to find out a reasonable way of engaging, right? Nielsen is a very, very large organization. We work with about 250 players. We certainly work with the large ones like the Pepsi, Nestle's, Cokes, but we also work with Ayur, and we also work with Hamdard, and we also work with the very, very small brands as well. So, and some of them are here in the expo as well. So, it's a matter of perception. Let's try and walk a distance and see how we can help you grow as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Once again, a big thank you to Manish. Anyone else? Any questions? I believe you can visit their stall, then he's there available.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we come towards the end of day one of the CMPL Expo, of the conference part. The expo, the stalls are still on. We would like to take the opportunity to thank all our panelists, our speakers, our exhibitors, and each one of you present here. Thank you so much for your time. Can we have a huge round of applause for yourselves, please? I hope you all had an enriching time listening to our speakers and also sharing your thoughts during breaks with all the attendees. Those of you who have not yet visited the expo, the stalls, please do so. See you all tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the day 2 of the CMPL Expo. The expo will start at 10 a.m. sharp. The conference, the first panel discussion, will start at 11 a.m. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening ahead.